Marcus Jackson stood outside Riverfront Bistro, his restaurant's elegant glass doors reflecting the setting sun. As the owner of one of Philadelphia's most acclaimed fine dining establishments, he'd built his success from nothing, transforming his grandmother's recipes into an empire. But lately, something felt wrong. The reviews were stellar, the profits steady, yet a nagging feeling gnawed at him. "If your instincts are speaking, listen," his grandmother used to say. Those words echoed in his mind as he adjusted his casual disguise, worn jeans, a plain hoodie, and a Phillies cap pulled low over his face. Tonight, he wasn't Marcus Jackson, the celebrated restaurateur. He was just another customer, hoping to understand what was really happening in his establishment. The hostess barely glanced at him as he entered, her practiced smile never wavering. "Good evening, sir. Table for one." Marcus nodded, careful to keep his voice neutral. "A booth in the back would be great. If you believe in supporting Black-owned businesses, take a moment to subscribe to our channel." As he settled into the plush leather booth, Marcus observed his creation through fresh eyes. The warm lighting cast a gentle glow over the exposed brick walls. Servers in crisp white shirts glided between tables, delivering plates of his signature dishes. The air was rich with the aroma of herbs and spices, his grandmother's legacy. A young waitress approached, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "Good evening. I'm Ashley. Can I start you off with something to drink?" "Just water for now," Marcus replied, pretending to study the menu he knew by heart. The waitress nodded and departed, leaving him to his observations. That's when he heard them, two voices from the booth directly behind him, young and hesitant. "Are you sure about this, James?" The first voice was nervous, barely above a whisper. "We have to do this, Nathan." The second voice was harder, determined. "After what they did to Dad." Marcus's ears perked up, his body tensing instinctively. The boys couldn't have been more than 14 or 15, but there was something in their tone that set off warning bells. "Dad said Mr. Williams promised him the head chef position," James continued, his voice bitter. "Said they shook hands on it. Then that Jackson guy bought the place, and suddenly Dad wasn't the right fit anymore." Marcus's heart began to race. Richard Williams, the name struck like lightning. The previous owner's nephew, a talented chef who'd been part of the staff when Marcus acquired the restaurant 2 years ago. "But what if someone recognizes us?" Nathan's voice trembled. "We're not supposed to be here." "They won't," James replied. "These people never really look at us anyway. Besides, Mom said he comes here almost every night to check on things. We just need to wait." Marcus gripped his water glass tightly, his mind racing. He remembered Richard Williams, his innovative dishes, his dedication to the kitchen. But there had been problems. Late arrivals, inconsistent performance, and most concerning, complaints from other staff about racist comments. "Dad wasn't just let go." James's voice dropped lower, forcing Marcus to strain to hear. "They destroyed him, blacklisted him from every decent restaurant in the city. Now he's cooking at some diner in Jersey, and it's all because of that." The boy's voice trailed off into a whisper, but Marcus could guess the slur that followed. Ashley returned, her smile unchanged. "Ready to order." Marcus forced himself to appear calm. "The house special, please." As she walked away, he fought the urge to turn around, to confront the boys, to explain his side of the story. But something held him back. If you believe in honest conversations about race in America, subscribe to join our community. Behind him, the boys continued their whispered conversation, each word a dagger. They spoke of their father's depression, their mother's extra shifts, the shame of moving from their comfortable suburb to a cramped apartment. "We just need proof," James was saying. "Proof that they discriminated against Dad. Mom says if we can document it, show how they treat people like us compared to their regular customers." Marcus closed his eyes, memories flooding back. The staff meetings where Richard had been confrontational, the customer complaints, the documented performance issues. He'd followed every protocol, given multiple warnings. But had he missed something? Had his own biases played a role he hadn't recognized? The sound of breaking glass shattered his thoughts. A server had dropped a water pitcher, sending shards skating across the floor. In the commotion, Marcus heard chairs scraping behind him. "That's him," James hissed. By the bar, Mr. Williams said, "That's Jackson's usual spot. Come on." Marcus turned just in time to see two African-American teenagers slipping from their booth, moving purposefully toward the bar where a white man in an expensive suit sat alone. The man who, Marcus realized with a sinking feeling, had been one of the strongest voices arguing for Richard's termination. In that moment, Marcus faced a choice. He could reveal himself, stop whatever the boys were planning. Or he could watch and learn, see his restaurant, his decisions through their eyes. The weight of his grandmother's words pressed on him again. "If your instincts are speaking, listen." Marcus stood, his decision made. But as he did, he caught a glimpse of something metallic in James's pocket, and his blood ran cold. Marcus's heart pounded as he watched James and Nathan weave between tables, their young faces set with determination. The metallic glint in James's pocket could have been anything: a phone, a camera, a voice recorder. But something in the boy's stance, the tension in his shoulders, suggested otherwise. The white man at the bar, Thomas Reynolds, Marcus's former business partner, sat oblivious, sipping an expensive bourbon. Reynolds had been vocal about maintaining the restaurant's image during the controversy with Richard Williams, his coded language making Marcus increasingly uncomfortable until their eventual falling out. If you believe in confronting uncomfortable truths about racism in America, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Moving quickly but carefully, Marcus made his way toward the bar. The restaurant's ambient noise covered his approach, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversations, the soft jazz playing overhead. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. "Sometimes the hardest truth is the one right in front of us." "Excuse me," Marcus called out, his voice carrying just enough to make both boys freeze. They turned, startled, and Marcus got his first clear look at their faces. They were younger than he'd thought. James couldn't have been more than 14. His brother perhaps 12. Their eyes held a mixture of fear and defiance that made Marcus's chest ache. "You're not supposed to be here," Marcus said quietly, keeping his voice gentle but firm. "Are you?" James's hand moved instinctively toward his pocket. "You don't know anything about us," he said, but his voice trembled slightly. "I know more than you think, James," Marcus replied, watching their eyes widen at his use of the name. "I know about your father, Richard Williams. And I know whatever you're planning right now isn't going to help him." Nathan took a step back, but James stood his ground. "How do you?" His eyes narrowed, studying Marcus's face. Recognition slowly dawned. "You're him. You're Marcus Jackson. If you believe in the power of dialogue to bridge divides, subscribe to join our community." The moment hung suspended, fragile as spun glass. Reynolds remained absorbed in his phone, unaware of the drama unfolding mere feet away. Other diners continued their meals, oblivious to the tension crackling between the restaurant owner and two boys carrying the weight of their father's shattered dreams. "Let's talk," Marcus said softly. "Not here, in my office. You deserve to hear the truth, and I need to understand what your father told you." James's hand was still in his pocket. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I'm not calling the police," Marcus answered simply. "And because I remember your father's cooking. His jambalaya recipe was one of the best I'd ever tasted." Something flickered in James's eyes, pride, perhaps, or memory. He glanced at his younger brother, then back at Marcus. Slowly, his hand emerged from his pocket. Marcus caught a glimpse of what looked like a small camera before James shoved it deep into his hoodie. "Fine," James said. "We'll talk. But we're not leaving until we get answers." Marcus nodded, gesturing toward a discreet door near the kitchen. As they walked, he noticed how other staff members' eyes slid past the boys. Just as James had said, not seeing them, not really. Another uncomfortable truth to confront. His office was warm and inviting, decorated with family photos and framed reviews. A large portrait of his grandmother dominated one wall, her kind eyes seeming to watch over the room. Marcus settled behind his desk while the boys took seats across from him, their postures stiff with tension. "Your father was a talented chef," Marcus began. "One of the most innovative I'd ever seen. But there were problems, late arrivals, inconsistent performance. And then there were the complaints. Lies," James spat. "White customers complaining because they didn't want to eat food cooked by a black man." Marcus leaned forward. "No, James. Complaints from other staff members. About comments your father made. About the way he treated people he thought were beneath him." The boys exchanged glances. "Dad wouldn't," Nathan started, but James cut him off. "You're just trying to justify what you did to him," James accused. "Mr. Reynolds told us the truth. How you bought this place and started pushing out anyone who didn't fit your image. How you tried to make it fancy and exclusive, too good for people like us." Marcus couldn't help but laugh, the sound startling both boys. "Reynolds told you that? Thomas Reynolds, who fought me every step of the way when I wanted to hire more diverse staff. Who complained that my grandmother's recipes were too ethnic for the clientele he wanted to attract. If you believe in challenging assumptions and looking deeper than surface appearances, subscribe to our channel." Confusion flickered across James's face. "But Mr. Reynolds was the one who warned Dad about you. He said you were the reason Dad got blacklisted." "Reynolds was my business partner," Marcus explained, his voice heavy with old pain. "Until I bought him out, partly because of his views on who belonged in this restaurant and who didn't. He's the one who spread rumors about your father, not me. I gave Richard multiple warnings, documented every issue, tried to work with him. But in the end, he refused to change." Marcus opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "Here's everything: the incident reports, the warnings, the customer feedback, both positive and negative. I keep it because I never want to forget that every decision I make affects real people, real families." James reached for the folder with trembling hands. As he and Nathan read, their expressions shifted from skepticism to confusion to dawning understanding. Marcus waited patiently, letting them process the truth at their own pace. But then, Nathan looked up, his young face troubled. "Why did Mr. Reynolds tell us those things about you?" "Because some people," Marcus said carefully, "find it easier to blame others than to face their own prejudices. Reynolds lost power when I took full control of the restaurant. He lost his ability to shape this place according to his narrow vision of who belongs here and who doesn't." James closed the folder slowly. "Dad never told us about any of this. He just said he was let go because of new management. It's easier sometimes," Marcus said gently, "to believe we're victims of others' prejudice than to admit our own mistakes. Your father is a gifted chef who let his pride and his own biases get in the way of his talent. That doesn't make him a bad person. It makes him human. If you believe in the importance of honest conversations about race, prejudice, and redemption, subscribe to be part of this journey." The office fell silent except for the muffled sounds of the restaurant beyond. Marcus studied the boys' faces, seeing the struggle as they tried to reconcile this new information with the story they believed for so long. Finally, James spoke, his voice small but steady. "What happens now?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering. The night had taken an unexpected turn, but maybe this was exactly what his instincts had been trying to tell him. Maybe this was an opportunity to break a cycle of misunderstanding and hurt. "That," he said, "depends on what you want to happen next." As the boys exchanged glances, Marcus noticed something shift in their posture. A loosening of tension, a glimmer of hope. But before any of them could speak, a commotion erupted from the dining room. Through the office door, they heard a familiar voice raised in anger. Thomas Reynolds was creating a scene at the bar, his face red with more than just bourbon, and he was heading straight for the office. The confrontation Marcus had been avoiding for months was about to explode with two vulnerable teenagers caught in the middle. The door to Marcus's office burst open with such force that the family photos on the wall rattled. Thomas Reynolds stood in the doorway, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. His eyes darted from Marcus to the two boys, and an ugly sneer twisted his features. Well, Reynolds slurred. Having a little community outreach meeting, Marcus? Or are these two here to complain about discrimination like their father? If you believe in standing up against hatred and bigotry, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Marcus rose slowly from his chair, positioning himself between Reynolds and the boys. Thomas, you're drunk. Let me call you a cab. Don't patronize me, Reynolds spat. I built this place. It was a respectable establishment before you turned it into. He gestured vaguely, his meaning clear even in his inebriated state. James and Nathan had shrunk back in their chairs, their earlier bravado replaced by genuine fear. Marcus could see James's hand trembling as it moved toward his pocket again, toward the camera that was supposed to document discrimination, but was now capturing something far more revealing. You didn't build anything, Marcus said, his voice steady and clear. You inherited this restaurant from your uncle, ran it into the ground, and then sold it to me because you were too proud to admit you needed help. And now you can't stand that I've made it successful while staying true to my heritage and my values. Reynolds laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Values? Is that what you call it? Look at what's happening to this neighborhood. The kind of people coming in now. You mean people like me? Marcus interrupted. People like my grandmother whose recipes you called too ethnic? People like these boys, who you manipulated to try to hurt me because you couldn't stand seeing a black man succeed where you failed. If you believe in confronting racism with truth and dignity, subscribe to join our community. The office had gone deadly quiet. Even the sounds from the restaurant seemed muted, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Nathan had tears in his eyes, but James had pulled out his camera and was recording everything, his young face set with determination. Reynolds noticed the camera and lunged forward. Give me that, you little... Marcus moved faster, catching Reynolds's arm. That's enough. You're done here, Thomas. Not just tonight, you're banned from this restaurant. And if you ever try to contact these boys or their father again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who and what you are. You can't do that to me, Reynolds sputtered. I have rights. I have connections. And I have video evidence of you drunkenly threatening minors while spewing racist rhetoric, Marcus replied calmly. Would your country club friends enjoy seeing that? Your business associates? Your grandchildren? The mention of his grandchildren seemed to penetrate Reynolds's alcohol-fueled rage. He deflated slightly, looking suddenly old and pathetic. You're making a mistake, he muttered, but the fight had gone out of him. Marcus pressed a button on his desk, and within moments, his head of security appeared. Please escort Mr. Reynolds out, Marcus instructed, and make sure he gets in a cab safely. As Reynolds was led away, Marcus turned back to the boys. Are you both okay? They nodded, still shaken. James held up his camera. We got it all, he said quietly. But I don't think this is what Dad would want us to do with it. If you believe in choosing healing over revenge, subscribe to be part of our journey. Marcus smiled, feeling a surge of pride for these young men who had come seeking vengeance but might have found something more valuable. What do you want to do? James and Nathan exchanged looks. Could we show it to Dad? Nathan asked hesitantly. Maybe if he sees how Mr. Reynolds really is. I think that's a wise decision, Marcus said. And while we're at it, I'd like to talk to your father. Not about the past, about the future. The boys looked confused. What do you mean? James asked. Marcus walked to his grandmother's portrait, studying her kind but determined face. This restaurant was built on the idea that good food brings people together, breaks down barriers. Your father is a talented chef. His mistake wasn't his cooking. It was letting people like Reynolds convince him that he had to prove something, that he had to be better than everyone else to deserve respect. He turned back to the boys. I'm opening a new location across town. It needs a head chef, someone with skill, creativity, and most importantly, the ability to learn from their mistakes. If your father is interested, you'd give him another chance? Nathan's voice was full of wonder. After everything? Sometimes, Marcus said, we all need a second chance. And sometimes it takes seeing the truth about others to help us see the truth about ourselves. If you believe in the power of second chances and redemption, subscribe to our channel. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Richard Williams, after watching the video his sons had captured, was forced to confront not only Reynolds's prejudice but his own defensive behavior that had contributed to his downfall. The conversation between him and Marcus was long and difficult, full of painful truths and acknowledgments on both sides. But from that honest dialogue came understanding. Richard accepted the position at the new restaurant, bringing with him not only his culinary talents but a new humility and willingness to learn. Marcus made sure the staff was diverse at all levels, creating an environment where everyone could succeed on their merits. James and Nathan became regular visitors to both restaurants. Their initial anger transformed into a passion for cooking. Marcus often found them in the kitchen after school, absorbing techniques from their father and other chefs, their young faces alight with possibility. One evening, as Marcus watched Richard teaching his sons how to perfect their grandmother's gumbo recipe, he thought about how close they had all come to tragedy, how easily hatred and misunderstanding could have poisoned another generation. Instead, they had found a way forward, not by ignoring the past but by confronting it honestly and choosing to learn from it. If you believe that understanding and forgiveness are stronger than hatred, subscribe to be part of this continuing story. The restaurant industry was still far from perfect. Prejudice and discrimination hadn't magically disappeared. But in their corner of the world, they were making a difference, one meal, one conversation, one changed mind at a time. Marcus's grandmother had always said that the true test of a person's character wasn't in never making mistakes, but in how they handled them when they did. Looking around at his extended restaurant family, at Richard teaching his sons, at the diverse staff working together seamlessly, at the customers from all walks of life enjoying meals side by side, Marcus knew they were passing that test. The smell of Richard's jambalaya wafted from the kitchen, mingling with the aromas of Marcus's grandmother's recipes. It was a perfect blend of traditions, a testament to what could happen when people chose understanding over anger, growth over stagnation, hope over fear. If you believe that every person has the capacity to change and grow, subscribe to join us on this journey of understanding and redemption. As night fell over the restaurant, the warm lights casting a gentle glow over the dining room, Marcus smiled. His grandmother would have been proud, not just of the success, but of the way they had turned a potential tragedy into an opportunity for healing and growth. The story of Marcus Jackson, Richard Williams, and their families wasn't just about a restaurant. It was about the courage to face uncomfortable truths, the strength to admit mistakes, and the wisdom to choose reconciliation over revenge. It was a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is always a path forward, if we have the courage to take it. If you believe in the power of stories to change hearts and minds, subscribe to our channel. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time.